Hello, everyone on the YouTubes. How are you doing today? I hope well on this Thursday. Welcome to the QC's reading of Klossowski's Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle. All 10 of you, and I think there's 7 people here in Discord. It's the biggest reading. I appreciate all of you coming. This is one of my favorite books, so I'm always kind of more or less confused. People don't show up, but that's okay. We are on page 70, and my camera's frozen again. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right, there we go. Let's talk about last week's reading before we dive a bit forward, because it's going to be pretty important to be able to say what we were reading last week, because we're going to be talking through the Übermensch, the Overman, because he's going to start diving through various ways people have interpreted the eternal return, and Nietzsche sort of wrestling with things, because again, he's trying to build out a genealogy of the eternal return for Nietzsche specifically. So last week, we spent a lot of time with Zarathustra. Not just Zarathustra, also Gay Science and a couple others, going through the ways that Nietzsche has attempted to get across the various things around the eternal return, but where he made it first like a parable with Zarathustra, the gateway, the single point that exists. You can't really ever pass through because you're either on one side or not. You're never in the gateway kind of thing. The ways that he's sort of brought these things together and had this critique sort of showing up was mostly what we spent last week doing, I think. Unless anyone's going to sort of disagree and think they got something else out of it, which I'd love to hear. That's mostly what I sort of talked through. It ended with the sort of way that Zarathustra, who's a very unique character, sort of teaching, sort of setting things up the way Nietzsche goes about it. Let me get to my notes. Where's exactly my notes? Because there's so many things we went through last week. Might just move to the next thing because it's so complicated, and I don't feel like we're going to be able to make a lot of. We went through so much, and I know it's been like 2 weeks, but Jesus Christ. Let's go back and read slightly, actually. I think maybe that's going to be the best bet. Let me make sure I have chat up. So that way I can at least see what you people are yelling at me about. And you guys in Discord can see the text, right? Yep, okay, good. We're just going to move. We're going to actually just move forward because I think he restates everything here in the next little bit. So we'll just go with that. But at this point, Klossowski, having gone through these multiple versions of how Nietzsche has talked about the eternal return, is, again, doing this genealogy, trying to bring about exactly what's happening, what Nietzsche is doing, how he's going through this. This next little bit we're going to be going through with Klossowski specifically is to talk about how the eternal return has multiple interpretations within Nietzsche itself that are fundamentally incompatible, more or less. And it's a thing to be sort of watching for as we go. I know I'm presetting this, but I think it's probably the best bet because he's making a lot of statements here very quickly. A lot of statements here in this next paragraph. On the one side, there's like the idea of the eternal return having the subject of the Übermensch, the overman, the great man who can re-will the eternal return, to give the eternal return meaning and purpose, right? And then there's the other take of it, which is more the vicious circle take, which is this pre-subjective process that produces subjects as temporary effects of itself. These two things are incompatible, and that's what he's going to be arguing sort of the rest of this section as we go through it. So as we do, drop in chat if you have a question, if you have a note, if you're confused about a thing. I'm happy to go back over it. We're kind of ending a very long section that is incredibly complex, so I'm not quite sure where to tee up anything else. So we'll just read and we'll figure it out as we go. But for now, I'm reading from here. Let's see. Did this work? Did this work? Did this work? I can't tell if it worked. It did on YouTube. Sorry, Discord, you don't get to see highlights. At this point, Nietzsche will become divided in his own interpretation of the eternal return. The overman becomes the name of the subject of the will to power, both the meaning and goal of the eternal return. The will to power is only a humanized term for the soul of the vicious circle, whereas the latter is a pure intensity without intention. On the other hand, the vicious circle as eternal return is presented as a chain of existences that forms the individuality of the doctrine's adherent, who knows that he has pre-existed otherwise than he now exists, that he will yet exist differently from one eternity to another. Like I said, I kind of gave a little bit of a preview, but that's what he's going to be driving through. Nietzsche's division in this, as we've kind of been going through, is a real particular thing as Klossowski's talking about it. Nietzsche divided himself. This is this internal struggle that Klossowski's been laying out for us. This is not sort of a development. This is not really an evolution in these things, but it's Nietzsche developing and building out and finding these contradictions. Again, this book is, as he said early on, meant to be read as this genealogical study of Nietzsche, bodily, physically, mentally, thought-wise, all of that as we go. So this division that is existing here, as he lays it out, I think really crisply, and again, almost too simply. It's almost too simple because it's a little poetic. We'll get to intensity. Don't worry, Saddam. We'll get to that. It's almost too simply because it's this odd poetic style, but more or less, he's saying that this division operates on a couple registers. There's, as we've talked about, the cosmological hypothesis that a lot of people have taken from the eternal return, the idea that everything cosmologically recurs, right? Versus the existential imperative, the sort of experiential existential imperative. These two sides, again, bifurcation. There's the return as this objective circular movement, this vicious circle, versus this subjective appropriation of itself. There's the return as impersonal process versus the thing that requires this sovereign subject of the overman to re-will it. At this point, and that's kind of, again, this is in time. So this is like 83 to 88 when Nietzsche began really developing the overman concept, which was a huge deal in Zarathustra, because he was working through the implications of this thing that the eternal return is. All this stuff came about. This isn't a biographical note, really. It's almost structural for Klossowski. There's this thing that's happening, this inherent play Nietzsche's making through in trying to think both about the dissolution of the subject and the supreme affirmation that we've talked about that seems to require a subject. And that paradox is what Klossowski's showing. Nietzsche's wrestling with at this point. Nietzsche's wrestling with it at this point. Pardon me. Does that make sense? Like as he's going through it, he's wrestling with it at this point. So then as he goes in, the overman. One sec, let me get that. No, why would you do that? Terrible. The overman becomes the name of the subject of the will to power, both the meaning and the goal of the eternal return. So this would be the humanist, a little bit focused on. I mean, it's the humanist take. You see this again. It's one of those ways that, well, Klossowski did not write this in the last 30 years, so he has never seen a YouTube video on this. This is one of the ways YouTube interprets the eternal return. There's only two ways people ever interpret it. It's both of these ways. This is the humanist sort of side, right? So we have this perfect man, this overman, who's not only a subject himself, but has a goal, or is the goal of the eternal return, which is problematic for all the things Klossowski's brought up, but also that there's a meaning to the eternal return. Like, and I say meaning in like the teleological or interpretive sense. There's some bigger thing. This is the Kaufman's reading, who I'm not a huge fan of, by the way, that you may have heard me shit on a lot during the Philosophy Tube videos. Really not a fan of Kaufman. The Nietzsche guy, not the film director. The film director is brilliant. Because Kaufman and others like him, they see the eternal return as this existential test, right? That only the Übermensch can affirm the eternal return and the recurrence of all things. And that includes rebuilding or bringing back his own suffering. Yeah, Voxy, exactly. Very nice. Yes, it's exactly. This is Kaufman's reading. And again, for Klossowski's really great that he's like bringing these out and is so good at being like suspicious of this. Because one of the things Kaufman really talks about is basically making the Übermensch the one who gives meaning to this meaningless return. That there is no meaning in the return itself, but one wills the meaning. And Klossowski has already built, I think, a lot for us, but he's suspicious of this because it reintroduces exactly the thing that the eternal return should, and Nietzsche has said does, dissolve, right? There's no stable subject. So how can there be an Übermensch, right? How can there be a teleological structure to shit? How can there be meaning making when all things are only related to themselves in and of themselves inside the thing itself? Right? Right? It doesn't follow itself. If the Übermensch is the goal of the eternal return, then we're back in the space of progressive sequential time, causative time with purposeful development. Hegel, we're back with Hegel. We're back with Hegel, and we're like throwing out all the other thinkers and also Nietzsche's own work across the board. It's a problem. We'll just say it's a problem and leave it there. We'll just say leave it there. Then the next sentence, the will to power is only let me clear it out one sec. I need to get used to doing the highlights again. The will to power is only a humanized term for the soul of the vicious circle, whereas the latter is a pure intensity without intention. See, I told you we'd get here, Saddam. But perhaps it is attaining the Übermensch constantly. But that would be a goal. That would be a thing. That would be a specific subjectivity. There's issues with that. So this next bit, I think, the will to power is only a humanized term for the soul of the vicious circle. This is not a nice comment. This is not, as I read it, this is not him like making a pure, simple statement. This is actually kind of a damning, radical rewriting of it. Because if we say that the will to power is this humanized term, it means that it's an anthropomorphized projection onto the impersonal processes. When we talk about will, like will to power, when we talk about the will to power, one, we're talking about agency in there. We're talking about something that wills. We're talking about something that has a direction, a vector, which only exists in sequential time. Will to power, it's to something, right? Right? It's to something. And then it has intentionality because it is itself an entire thing that is doing a thing. It has a purpose. And so when we talk about the vicious circle being, as, and I love the words here, a pure intensity without intention, intensities are pre-subjective, pre-intentional fluxes of forces. Pure intensity, and intensities as a thing. And as Saddam, I just like saying that name a lot. Did he leave? Well, that sucks. I was hoping to be able to. Oh, you're listening to you on YouTube. Well, that works then too. I just liked being able to say I'm explaining something to Saddam. That's all. I don't know why. Because I grew up in the 90s. Pure intensities connects to an incredibly rich tradition of philosophy. So Spinoza talked about affects being modes of power that exist sort of before or around consciousness. They are pure intensities. Leibniz had the small perceptions, right? I don't know. There's a term for it. I haven't read monadology in like 3 months, and my brain didn't handle it super well the first time. So just smart, like just accept that. But this is in line with like Deleuze. This is Bergson. Before we name a thing, before a thing can be named, the intensities are the ongoing chaos of all of these things colliding and doing things. And just like with sound, as sound waves cancel each other or become additive, and it's not just as simple as there only being two sound waves, the intensities of existence that produce the complexities of you and I and the ability for me to say you and I, they're so fucking chaotic and complex. But way back, the pure intensities that are doing it, that are colliding and doing these things, this is the vicious circle. It's pure intensities without intention. They're not trying to do a thing. A sound wave isn't trying to get you to hear it, right? Like, don't anthropomorphize shit in that way. The waves of the ocean aren't trying to erode a beach. That's not how that works. The intensities that produce the waves aren't trying to make a wave. These things don't have intention in this way. This isn't about purposelessness in the sense of truly simply random. It simply means without teleology here. It's not aiming at anything beyond its own intensive variation. Nietzsche said shit like this all the time. He had the phrase, "the world has no goal," which is like, if you want to just say he sort of super didn't support Hegel. I'm not like, there's no direction for these things. There's no goal. There's none of this sort of exists in this way. And so this is this humanist position, and Klossowski immediately tears into it. Then also, on the other hand, the vicious circle as eternal return is presented as a chain of existences that forms the individuality of the doctrine's adherent, who knows that he has pre-existed otherwise than he now exists, that he will yet exist differently from one eternity to another. Also, Saddam, hopefully that explained what you were asking. So this is the other whole of the division that we're sort of experiencing when we go through Nietzsche. This is, one sec, Siddham says, where Leibniz says complexes are composed of simples, intensities are the complexes. So Leibniz is small perceptions. These things that exist for Leibniz below apperception, it's beneath apperception, right? So if you have a background in Leibniz, that would be how I'd phrase it, is that it's things that are beneath the threshold of apperception. And each of those small perceptions, I believe Deleuze in his book on the Fold talks about them as the petite perceptions, I think is the phrase he uses. So it's a little bit different than that because, again, it's not the complexes. This is about apperception versus perception for Leibniz, to me. And again, there are people who know monology way fucking better than me. So, well, look at someone has joined us in YouTube. Hello, my friend. Do you know the how you're doing, Kid Not Kin? I hope you're well. For those of you who do not know, Kid Not Kin, who has just shown up in chat, who I didn't know actually still used YouTube, has been every day. Literally, I think there's like 3 or 4 days not at protests and doing amazing work with his amazing partner. I want to say people's real names because now I know everyone in real life. Becoming, not unbecoming. You should give love. It's good to have you here, Jordan. Okay. There's a lot said here. So, as we just went through the sort of humanist version of these things, right? Let's talk about it instead as everything will reincarnate, everything will come back, cosmological bullshit. He opens here with saying, is presented as this chain of existences, Buddhist reincarnation type shit. And again, the other way people take this fucking stupid, the other stupid fucking way people read Nietzsche. These are basically the 2 YouTube ways. This other way. This chain of existence that forms the individuality of the doctrines inherent. Individuality is not a given, right? But instead, it's something that forms. It's a formation. It's this crystallization from this chain of existences, right? I'm not a big fan of this kind of thinking. This is, I'm a Simondonian, right? Simondon is his version of the individuation of things is that it's always an ongoing process, not that it is from this chain of existences, right? This next thing happens. It's not this accomplished element. It's this ongoing coextensive thing. And that it's happening here. That forms the individuality of the doctrines adherent. Fuck, Klossowski's great. It's slightly ambiguous because who is a doctrine's adherent, right? Does the eternal return produce the adherent, or does the adherent recognize what was already the truth? And saying this, there's if you're a proper adherent, these are the things you get. Like, Klossowski is just straight up shitting on this entire, he just hates this. He hates all of this stuff. And he has the next line, and I really like this. And this is where we're going to end up spending a few moments because it's a new word. And I like new words. In this way, Nietzsche introduces a renewed version of metempsychosis. Okay. Metempsychosis is a Buddhist, Hinduist, Platonic conceptions around the psychic being a soul substance, that your soul migrates between bodies, that you have a soul of a thing. And yes, also very much fuck ice, exceptionally. And Goddard, there's always a need for more costumes. We have we now have couple other people besides us. We have a couple people besides us now doing this too. And the costumes aren't like a multi-use thing. If you've ever bought one of those things, you'll know the fact that we've had Lacey's our pink frog, Becoming and Becoming's our pink frog, our mascot. And the fact that Lacey's able to make it last as long as it does is stunning. They last 2 or 3 days. These costumes get torn up, especially when you get tear gassed, maced, and all kinds of other things, because you can't wear that the next day. So yeah, lots of fun parts. I'm going to stop talking about Operation Inflation, operationinflation.com. Go there. It's good stuff. When we talk about the soul and how it moves between bodies, this idea like the Christians have, that when you die, your soul goes to heaven and you have like an outward looking version of a thing. There is always with this, and this is metempsychosis, old fucking word. And it's such a fucking good word. It's such a fucking good word. If I get on your Discord, we'll be able to figure out how to hook up costumes for out here in Central MN. Jordy can post a Signal chat user that you can message, Queen. And I vouch for Queen really hard. You should know, you know Queen, Jordy. And if you guys message, you can always say hi, and we will find ways to get it to whoever. And we're in a reading. We'll talk about all these things afterwards. Metempsychosis, old thing. The idea is ultimately that there is something that is non-changing within you, right? So when someone says that they've lived past lives, when the Hindus or the Buddhists talk about reincarnation, there's something that survives. There is something in you that survives these things. And there's a lot of stuff in it that is almost on its face clearly, we'll just say, silly. The idea that there is a soul, right? As a thing. The idea that there is moral karmic causality. There's a lot of issues there. These things are problematic, and you're not a distraction. We love you very much, kid. We love you. There's a lot of issues, we'll just say. But Nietzsche seems to be, and that's the kind of comment here, that Nietzsche's bringing back and playing with this renewed version of this. Because again, for this, there's no soul substance. Instead, it's an intensive sign system. There's no moral causality. There is just a necessity of its own return, the circle itself. Never heard metempsychosis? It's not used often. Like it's a great fucking word. It's a great fucking word. It's just not used very often. This is Pythagoreans and people who like try to do the theory of Hinduist or Buddhist readings of other philosophers. It's kind of a bridge word that takes people between the theological and the philosophical. It's a really cool fucking word. LH, that is a single username. OperationInflation.01 on Signal. Message them. It's a filtering process. It's a filtering process. So all of this, Nietzsche's sort of finding ways around these things and is sort of bringing this back and playing with this sort of larger project that Nietzsche's had, this naturalism without the weird reduction of things. He's always utilized and played with these religious concepts. He really has. It's a tropey thing. It's a Nietzsche trope that he plays with these things and does this. The way he talks about salvation, again, the Ubermensch or Zarathustra as a whole, but he's always playing with these things. And metempsychosis, which is one of those things, he plays with, he's taking them and making them immanent. He's removing any transcendent elements outside of experience elements and giving them ways that they're able to retain transformative power, which is cool. It's very interesting writing. And here, Klossowski is sort of going to be laying out all of this and talking about sort of the issues behind it, because there are stakes in all of this. If you are a chain of existences, which is at this point we're pretty much, I would argue we're a little far into the book if you need me to explain how that comes about. But if we are this chain of existences, it means that your identity is contingent. It means that you are responsible for all possible configurations of yourself, every potentiality. It means that any moral evaluation considers all of the chains, the way that the karmic religions tend to not think of any single life, but instead the element strung between them, the thread that connects all of the chains, not just one state. That's not how it operates. All of these things sort of come together in their really unique way. So as we go through these two ways, the humanist or the metapsychotic way, right? The thing that's important is to start going, hey, wait, which of these is really Nietzsche's insights? Or is this a contradiction we're going to be accepting? These things don't work together. And if you haven't already noticed, he's kind of leaning a little bit. But how we play for these things, how we play within these things is kind of the big fucking huge deal. Does that make sense? I know it's a little rambly. Everyone following okay? Is it acceptable? No? Maybe? Yeah. And again, we're not at the final point yet, so if you're kind of figuring out what he's trying to do or how he's trying to do it, we're not quite at the final point. We're 2 paragraphs-ish, to 3 paragraphs to the end of this little section here. And just be thinking about the way that, again, this isn't yet meant to be, here is the thing. But instead, here are the things Nietzsche is at this point writing about, dealing with, and having these bifurcated ideas that he's trying to work his way through. We will get to a thing, but it's very good. Let's see. By naturalism, you mean materialism in a spatial-temporal way or preference for science? I mean, I think for Nietzsche, that would be a very, very long answer. I will just say for now, we're just going to leave it there for a moment, because we're going to be kind of talking about that in the next little bit here. So we're bringing back responsibility. Well, sort of, like, not explicitly, but it's an implied element, because if in the metapsychotic sort of tradition, the idea is that at some point that connective thing, that consistency becomes a better being. This presumes the totality of responsibility. There's the more recent version of this that I've seen a lot of. It's a writer of The Martian wrote a short story called The Egg that went like super viral, and it's fine. It gets passed around a lot. And the idea is that you are effectively an egg, and every life that you lead, the entire existence, you're going to die and be reborn as everything else. And at the end of it, you will have learned and experienced so much you will become effectively a god. There is in that, this is the idea of karmic and all of this, in that is responsibility, in that is a goodness of a soul, in that is the moral demands and the growth of a singular thing. which, if there's anything that Nietzsche's maybe super not for, it seems weird to be bringing this stuff up. It seems weird to be mentioning these things. What is the connective tissue? What is the thing? The world is an egg. I mean, that's the, yes. This is the idea. And it's like, okay, but it feels unsatisfying. So Nietzsche goes on, Klossowski goes on. In this way, Nietzsche has introduced this renewed version of metempsychosis. The need for purification, and hence a culpability that must be expiated across successive existences before an initiate soul can attain a pure state of innocence and be admitted into an immutable eternity. Such is the ancient schema that was transmitted to the Christian gnosis by the esoteric religions of India and Asia. That's the cosmic egg. This is the idea. This is the world is an egg. Deleuze's version slightly different than what we were just talking about. But the challenge here is that he just laid out actually what I was talking about. It's really hard for me not to just talk about this thing as I'm reading it. The logic here is teleological. Movement necessarily is always about this heading towards a redeemed state of things, right? Such as the ancient schema transmitted to the Christian gnosis by esoteric religions of India and Asia. There's hell of a phrasing there, my friend. Hell of a phrasing. But that's the thing. He's going through the steps. We're back to responsibility because in metempsychosis, there is a singular thing that's constantly growing and getting better and getting into this thing that's always able to move us to better stuff. But that idea, which the eternal return in, again, a huge number of interpretations, and most of the ones you'll see on YouTube are about living the thing over and over until you become better or you make the right choice or whatever. He goes on, and we're just gonna read because I think he makes the point very well. But there is nothing of this. There is nothing of all this in Nietzsche, neither expiation, nor purification, nor immutable purity. Pre- and post-existence are always the surplus of the same present existence, according to the economy of the vicious circle. It presumes that an individuality's capacity could never exhaust the differentiated richness of a single existence. We'll come back to it, don't worry. That is to say, its affective potential, that's with an A. Metempsychosis represents the avatars of an immortal soul. Nietzsche himself says, if only we could bear our immortality, that would be the supreme thing. Now for Nietzsche, this immortality is not specifically individual. The eternal return suppresses enduring identities. Nietzsche urges the adherent of the vicious circle to accept the dissolution of his fortuitous soul in order to receive another equally fortuitous. In turn, having passed through the entire series, this dissolved soul must itself return. That is, it must return to that degree of the soul's tonality in which the law of the circle was revealed to it. This is the paragraph we're doing all this for, by the way. Like, this is literally the paragraph we're doing all this for. There is nothing of this in Nietzsche. Basically saying that these are all, what the fuck are you talking about? And by the way, if you actually read Nietzsche, you'd say the same thing. Like, it's confusing nonsense. Nietzsche has none of this. Not only that, but he's polemically opposed to them. There's no moral debt payment system in Nietzsche's way of seeing things. There's no base people who transform to noble people. There's no catharsis in Nietzsche's, all of this shit is not Nietzschean at all. And yet, there's no goal state for Nietzsche that we need to get to be a good person. Improving humanity is the last thing I promise to do, is literally something he wrote. It's Twilight. Join our Twilight of the Idols reading. It's a great line. His entire framework is opposed to the moral religious. There's no teleology at all. No telos in Nietzsche at all. Nietzsche hates this shit. Green says, it's interesting to me that people never internalize it as dying over and over. They really, in their reality they paint is a hell of dead ending temporality. Yes. It's a fatalism. It's a basic fatalism that they're building, but I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Pre and post existence. Where'd my pen go? Gotta highlight. Pre and post existence. What the fuck? Pre and post existence are always the surplus of the same present existence, according to the economy of the vicious circle. I love his writing. It's a lot. Okay. Surplus is a thing that requires just a moment or two in order to break apart what this sentence really means. Because surplus is the functional thing that Klossowski's talking about here. If we're talking about things in an economic framework, which, again, Nietzsche does quite often, as do most of the people who follow on from him. When we talk about your present existence, think of it as like capital investment, right? This is the actual configuration of things, the actualized elements, your present existence being actualized constantly. You have an existence that is before this and after this. Now, this is profit or interest exists outside of this. This is the surplus of existence, that left over, or the thing beyond just being used up. It is excess, it is overflow. And the economic use of the term surplus here is because we're talking about the circulation of intensive forces, of the flux, the intensities we talked about earlier. Now, this is not a capitalist economy. I'm using that as examples of what surplus tends to mean here, because surplus is fantastic language for a lot of this. Surplus doesn't accumulate. Like, that's not really how it works. Surplus isn't something that then becomes invested elsewhere, for Nietzsche in this case. It doesn't get consumed. It doesn't disappear. This is literally from 2 days ago in our AO reading. Anyone who was there might remember I got hung up on specifically the consumption of surplus. So I hate when the serendipity of things plays as it does. Pre and post existence are always the surplus of the same present existence. The surplus of the same. This isn't a different existence. This surplus isn't left over from the previous one. The surplus is instead variations of one intensive continuity in this case. And the surplus specifically is variations that exceed what can be actualized in a single configuration of intensities. Okay? Yes, this is a lot, but it's actually really cool. It's really great. Think of it mathematically. Every term that exists in math is both itself, but also the implication of the series, right? So your present contains all variations of past future as virtual elements. Saw a lecture from Actual Virtual Journal. Yes. This is that. The virtual is that intensive potential that always exceeds what can be actualized right now. It's always exceeding that. And this is a big shift It's a huge deal. You'll see what you might understand why he's getting along, why this dude, Klossowski, was close to Deleuze, may have dedicated a few things to the guy. This is Bergson. This is Bergson through Klossowski. Because Klossowski is playing very differently here with the actual and virtual. It's not quite Bergson. It's different enough here. This is much more in line with Deleuze, and their version of it plays very differently. But it's touching into, it's not Goddard. It's not that there's no Bergson here. This is an evolution or a revolution or this is a radicalizing of Bergson's actual and virtual. I would say that it's a radicalizing. You need somewhere to start, and it is starting there, but it's not quite the same thing. It's like, okay, so for those who don't know what we're talking about, it's fucking nerd chat. I love my nerd chat. For Plato, and I think for a lot of philosophy, right? The present that exists has a natural deficit. It has a lacking of fullness. The things that are just don't have everything in it. Forms of things are a surplus. And this is kind of similar to Christianity. Like the time of now, the present is the fallen you, right? You don't have the plentitude of divinity. The man-God distinction is important, but instead, flip it a bit around. Nietzsche, Klossowski, Deleuze, and I would argue Bergson too. I think a lot of these guys in this sort of vein. Present existence has a consistent surplus, batai, that it can't consume. It can't exhaust. Eternity is the surplus. It isn't a transcendent realm of otherness. There is a virtuality that can't be consumed right now. And that's what he's talking about. Pre and post existence are the surplus of the same present existence, according to the economy of the vicious circle. As you are, and this is, by the way, this is everyone, everything, all times, always. Right now, whatever you're doing is not exhausting all of the potentialities. It can't. Fundamentally, it can't. So right now, your actual is sort of crystallizing the sets of life that are potentials or virtuals around it. This is what he's talking about. There is always surplus that cannot be consumed, according to this economy of the vicious circle. Because again, the circle has a almost law of exchange. It just doesn't have an external standard. There's no gold standard here. There's no Bitcoin, right? There's no moral currency in this, right? None of that is there. None of that's there. Every moment instead is trading with every other moment in this circular, again, not linear, circular flux of things. No moment is privileged. Oh, fuck, my ADHD is just the surplus. Yes. Yes, actually. If you connect that to the way that the schiz operates and realize that that's the autism that is in Anti-Oedipus, there you go. And this is a cursed share. If you haven't read General versus Restricted Economy work of George Bataille, I don't think I can recommend it more. It's incredibly important here. But Deleuze in DNR, and I have to give Elderon an exceptionally large amount of credit for correcting me recently on my video on the actual and virtual, which was more the Bergsonian, and now I've gone back through and I've and Elderon spent time with me. I appreciate it. Deleuze's version of virtual and actual is much more in line with this. And it's kind of super, super fucking important. Because, and we'll do this in the next little bit. Let me read chat. Chat's going wild. It's fair to say here, surplus is the arithmetic difference of two states. No. Right now, as things are being actualized, your experience is being actualized. You're hearing me say things whatsoever, blah, blah. This actualization has crystallizing it around it the sets of everything that also potentially could be, or that it potentially touches into. Every now has an infinite number of future past sort of existences that crystallize around it. That's the surplus that is consistently and always produced and can never be fully consumed. You can't do everything, if that makes sense. Foxy says, how come intensities are thought to contain the lower, not quite, Bergson, what is preexistence? So what is preexistence is contained and is unexhausted in the present. What is post-existence and the unconsumed surplus continuing? Give me 2 paragraphs and ask that again. Because this section is kind of and when I say this section, like I literally mean like we have this and then that. And then we get to the difference between eternal return and traditional fatalism, which is really great, but you should have at least a better ability to have that answer by then, if that makes sense. Biggest restriction is temporality since time is linear. Or is it? We'll get there. Because a vicious circle is not linear. So that's a whole fucking thing. Let's keep going. We'll keep going. It presumes that an individuality's capacity could never exhaust the differentiated richness of a single existence. We'll stop there, and the rest of it is, that is to say, it's affective potential, but I can't show 2 pages at once. So it's the way it's going to go. So that's where it's going to be. Every fucking sentence for Klossowski, I could spend. Every sentence is a rabbit hole. It's one of the things I absolutely adore about reading Klossowski. And this is true of all of his writing, by the way. Robert Sossois is the same thing. Every single sentence is like, you can tell he spent so much time like an artist. It's incredible. All right. There's kind of 2 claims in this sentence. I'm going to do my best. First is, the individuality's capacity could never exhaust the differentiated richness of a single existence. The capacity could never exhaust. Any specific configuration of things, any individual, any individuated thing is itself a finite selection from infinite potential affects. Okay? Leibniz. We're just going over Leibniz. Monads are not wildly different than this. This is a monad which is what makes up everything. It expresses the whole world from a limited perspective. There's scientific theories that really play into this nicely, but it's that the whole world is in the monad from a particular perspective. Spinoza, this is the infinite subject with modes, multiple modes. It has a capacity. It presumes this individuality's capacity could never exhaust the differentiated richness of single existence. The differentiated richness is insane as a line here, because this is not about a homogeneity or a plenitude of homogeneity, which a lot of people, I'm not going to get into it, sort of run with. This is not just about having more stuff of the same. It's saying fundamentally that there are different kinds of affective experiences. Again, modes. Again, massive differences. This is qualitatively distinct. This is not quantitatively distinct. Right? That is to say, it's affective potential. Existence is not really measured by duration. Instead, it's measured more by the range of affects that it undergoes or can undergo. I probably should say can undergo because it's about potential. Spinoza screaming through all of this. For Spinoza in the Ethics, existence is basically the power to affect and be affected. That's the primacy of what power is. And when we say the richness of existence, I adore that. The effective potential. This is Spinoza screaming through this. And then we get back to the critique. Maybe before we do, Goddard says, in mass, there's something called geometric combinatorics. Are you saying they're same as for subject, is it? I don't know fucking any of those words. So I'm too stupid. Sorry, Goddard. Time, liner, pick one. Don't worry, Lear. So, why do I like this? Before we get even to the rest of this paragraph, this fucking goddamn Klossowski. What is real about an existence is not its substantial core, its soul, right? Instead, it has an affective capacity. Deleuze calls this degrees of power. Guattari has his own terms. Like, this is a big deal for these thinkers just in general. Having a greater affective range is richer, like richness in terms of the way you might say food is very rich, right? It's ontologically richer, but there's no moral demand here. There's no moral capacity or claim that's sort of part of this. This isn't about being a better person. It's a richer existence. And again, not better. It's complex. So that if that's the ontological side of it, then the ethical question ultimately becomes not what should I do, which is the metempsychotic or the moral claim or the Christian claim or whatever of ethics. Instead, it's a reevaluation where one steps back and says, what am I capable of? What affects are within my capacity? The expansion of this affective capacity is the drive. This is the measure of intensification. This is the enhancement of life. Nietzsche writes about this explicitly. So multiple existences of any sort. And again, this is touching into Nietzsche's new sort of metempsychotic thing. But a single lifetime, a single moment, who you are right now, cannot actualize the totality of potentials. It's not. One, you're going to die. Death is part of every existence's affective range. So, if that's the case, if death is the end of that, it requires multiple deaths. Right? Requires multiple deaths at that point. So, let's keep talking about it. Metempsychosis represents the avatars of an immortal soul. Metempsychosis represents the avatars of an immortal soul. So, avatars is a really cool word If you don't know the history of it, it's a really cool word. I had to learn the history of it. It is not just about giant blue people, but the reason that Jim chose that word for avatars is actually from an old Lucasfilm video game. If you didn't know, that's no joke. This is fucking weird history. No one had ever made a thing where you had a virtual representation of yourself in digital space prior to Lucasfilm. I'm not joking when I say this. So as you would move a character around in what was the first MMO, you can go research this, they needed a term for what you were controlling. So they went back into the old, like Sanskrit, really, no joke, old like Sanskrit things. And Avatara, which means descent, sort of, it's multiple incarnations embodied. That's what it is. An avatar thing is basically in Hindu. It's an old thing, but it's the intentional manifestation of you and God. So Lucasfilm called it the Avatar. I'm not joking. This is the history. It's a really fun history, but Klossowski here is kind of playing that same game, because he's stripping away the teleology here. Metempsychosis represents the avatars of an immortal soul. When Jim used it for the movie Avatar is about what it means to have a secondary embodied thing, stripped of teleology. That doesn't exist. It's about you and whatever is able to transfer between. And Jake Sully, Avatar has an interesting purpose behind it. I know it's a shit fucking, I know what it is. But when Jake Sully is in different material conditions, he is different. It is because he dies and becomes anew. He's reborn. Literally, that's what the film is about. It's about the multiple lives one can live under different material conditions if one allows oneself. It's a moral of the film. It's embarrassing anyone else sees it any other way, because that's actually how they talk about it. So, doesn't matter. Klossowski's playing in similar ways, because what's happening here is that it's not purposeful descents into a secondary. And that's really where the original term comes from. Again, the rebirth, the reincarnate sort of karmic ongoing rebirth life, all of that shit. No, the immortal soul here plays through a very different set of configurations, not to achieve a goal. So again, there's no telos, there's no goal, there's none of that. The reason it does this is because the richness of that thing can't be contained in a single form. That's it. They can't be contained in a single form. So metempsychosis represents the avatars of an immortal soul. As a doctrine, it represents this. It theorizes what the eternal return is in this way, that the necessary plurality of any intensive singularities manifestations exists like this. Contrast this, maybe what we're going to be coming up against, contrast it to the traditional version of metempsychosis, right? That different lives are a means to an end, that they purify what is underneath it. No. Nietzsche sees this as actually the different incarnations, the different avatars of things, is about exhausting expressions and potentialities, because any single intensive configuration contains all of those things virtually but cannot actualize. And so another you has to actualize it. Nietzsche himself says, by avatars, is it just copies of the original soul of God? No. That's the reason that he's using the term the way he's using. It's the reason I brought up the video game thing. The reason we use the term avatar, as we say, oh, look, you're my avatar in the game, is from a Lucasfilm game. That's not a joke. Like, George Lucas is responsible for the term. Actually, I think Tim Schafer might be. I should ask Tim about that story. I should. That'd be an interesting. I'm going to see if I. That'd be fun. That's a fun background. I should do that. That'd be fun. But no, it's not about an original soul. That's not the setup. It's that any single soul cannot exhaust all the potentials its actualization brings about. And as such, more existence is more of you is required. More yous that live and die. More yous that live and die. And that's the line here that we're going to go into now. Nietzsche himself says, if only we could bear our immortality, that would be the supreme thing. Such a fucking good bit. The formulation here is basically that we are already immortal. Remember, I made the joke a few times. It's the old Lao Tzu line, way. You're already enlightened. You simply don't know it. There's a big play in that direction here. Big play. Because we have an immortality. All of us do. Done. That's it. And we're all immortals. If only we could bear that. If only we could handle the weight of such a thing. And it's a really fascinating. I think this is not Kloss. There's a whole. I tried spending a lot of time. This is a really interesting. It's fine. There's a lot of implications here, but I want to leave the sentence alone. I don't want to overanalyze it because I think it works nicely, and I think it's just a very nice punctuation. Because the point that Klossowski's making is coming. Now for Nietzsche, this immortality is not specifically individual. The eternal return suppresses enduring identities. Ah, God. Not specifically individual. Not specifically individual. There's so many layers of this. I feel like I could go in too many directions with this. I know where it goes, and I'm trying not to. The big deal here is that the immortality is not about your immortality or my immortality specifically. There's a lot of ways this can be interpreted. You can be playing with it and say that this is about non-individual immortality, that it's an impersonal force that is pre-personal and pre-individual. If you can't tell, that's where I'm lying. But you could also say that it's like trans-individual. And I don't mean that you have to be trans to do it. Trans means amongst or between or cross. The trans-individuality of things, the crossing boundaries, the seeming break in that. What is immortal is more intensive configurations that's able to actualize consistently in different ways through individuals. There's a lot of ways to sort of play through this. The big deal and the implication is more important for the rest of this, because metaphysically, this challenges the idea of there being a single substance, right? More substance ontology, maybe. There's no immortal things. There's not an immortal thing. Instead, it's about immortal processes or relations. Because again, it's not any individual. It's not about that. Also, ethically is important. You can't appeal to the individuality of things. I as a person want this. They as a person did this thing. It breaks that as a thing. Politically, following on from that, it's the same thing. It's the liberal individuation of desire and discrete bounded selves, tossing it away. All of that. The eternal return, though, suppresses enduring identities. We've gone through this. This is, if you've just joined the reading, go back. It's great. sort of passing from the virtual actual intensities, but as the identity and the multiple. Yeah, well, it's the eternal return is fundamentally incompatible with a persistent selfhood. And we're kind of getting at why, and he's about to say why. But again, if that selfhood is an instantiation of actualization of all of the intensities, but all of the potential intensities that selfhood then creates in virtuality, the potential space, all of that excess then needs to be absorbed in another and then produces more. And it's this crunching building process of potentials and actuals, always consuming, always consuming, always consuming, always consuming. And that's kind of the setup here. The eternal return means everything returns differently, because there's no identity that's able to maintain between it. There's no subject that's able to stay between it. The intensities, though, they're all the same intensities, different configurations of them. So there's no enduring identity, but instead there's a repetition through this, a consistency pulled through all of these moments, a thread that we're able to see somewhat through it that's simulated, again, through the code of everyday signs that I am using by saying I, and that I referent that's able to be coming through here and able to be doing this. It's kind of the big fucking deal. So there is no real substrate, but there is some stability clearly that's tying it all together, but identity itself is being suppressed. Klossowski goes on, Nietzsche urges the adherent of the vicious circle to accept the dissolution of his fortuitous soul in order to receive another equally fortuitous. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Fortuitous commonly tends to now have a positive angle to it. How fortuitous that you came across that set of lottery numbers. We don't usually say, how fortuitous that tree fell on your house. But it's not really wildly different than that. Fortuitous means not earned. That's what it means. We don't really use it that way. That's how Klossowski means it here. This is a translation thing, so just deal with it. But there's a contingency to it. The fortuitous soul is the contingent soul that came together in that individuation. In that individuation, that identity structure. So your current identity structure and your current individuation has been constructed or inherited in some capacity. Not in a way that's better or worse than the last. It's just a different configuration. And it is contingent and it's necessary. Is it fortuit in the French? I don't have my copy out and I'm not going to go get it because I don't feel like it. I think it's fortuite. I think it's Latin, honestly. So, but that's fine. I don't care. Let me know, Estelle. But again, we're specifically playing with Nietzsche's reversioning or revolutionizing this idea of metempsychosis, the eternal rebirth of you and things, and distancing it from the sort of traditional, karmic existence. Hard not to read this as a DNR chapter on repetition and shrooms. It should be hard because literally that's the thing. Yeah, fortuite. So that means by chance. Am I wrong? Estelle? Yeah. We tend to, in English, add a positive angle to it. I'm trying to avoid that. It's not really a positive angle. It's not negative, but it's specifically, again, the idea of you earned this, or this is better because you earned it, or you did something, therefore you did a thing. That, oh, how fortuitous, tends to imply, because man, is this shit baked into our fucking culture or what? Oh, how fortuitous. You clearly earned where you're at. Like, it's wild. It's not about earned. It's chance. And so we have these really weird, the language here. The adherent of the vicious circle should accept the dissolution of his fortuitous soul in order to receive another equally fortuitous, equally contingent configuration. Again, not better, not worse. You right now are not better, not worse than before. You need to accept it. Accept. If you want to talk about how this touches into Buddhism, tell me this doesn't touch into Buddhism. This is the letting go of your ego, allowing ego death of a thing. The amor fati, the love of fate from the Stoics that Nietzsche 100% is playing with. The great death of Zen Buddhism that exists, the Satori before enlightenment. All of those things are about breaking, but there's a crucial difference. At no point you are dissolving into nothing. That's not it. You're not dissolving into nothing. You're dissolving into another equally chance-based contingent you, soul, whatever, rebirthing another individuation of you. This is not about escaping existence, but metamorphosis within existence because of the surplus generated through any actuality. Whew. There's layers to this. My brain just wants to run down, and I'm doing my best not to. Because the phrasing is just great. That in order to receive is so fucking interesting. You can't will the next soul. You can't say, I'm ready, give me it, and spend time concentrating. A watched soul never boils. That there is no persistent willing subject to will the next you. But you can allow it to receive another. Allow it. So how do you accept this? It seems like a paradox, right? So who's accepting it if the acceptor dissolves? Well, that's like the thing. You need a subject to achieve liberation from subject. Or it's not the subject that's doing it. It's the intensive configuration itself that is accepting. It has nothing to do with a conscious decision. It is a shift in the intensive tonality, the mood, the vibe, the intensive vibes that allow the transition to take place. Think of it as like phase transition in physics, right? It's not really that you need an external agent. It's just a point that all of the things together reach that create that next movement. And he goes on. In turn, having passed through the entire series, this dissolved soul must itself return. That is, it must return to that degree of the soul's tonality in which the law of the circle was revealed to it. This is this is fucking horrifying, wonderful. There's so much fucking in this sentence. So here, mini series. The series has passed all of the intensities, all the potentialities, all of these things have come. And the dissolved soul must itself return. It must return to that degree of the soul's tonality in which the law of the circle was revealed to it. Sorry. I find it beautiful, and it's just a lot. Let's go bit by bit. Having passed through the entire series, there is no selection happening here. There is no better or worse. There is no wording around having experienced the things one needs to. Teleological bullshit. That's not it. But there is an order-ish, a series of heterogeneous elements. It's all of them. It's all of them. It's all of them. This is not moral causality like karma. This isn't that shit. This is not the dialectic. This is not the fucking Hegelian thing. This is an exhaustive traversal across it. Every configuration and the virtual potential with it leads to the next by its own dynamics, its own affective dynamics. Yet, the dissolved soul must itself return, which is fucking great language. Because how can the thing that's dissolved come back? It's dissolved. The soul has dissolved. The subject has dissolved. How, Nietzsche writes about this. Klossowski talked about this. The experience of the eternal return is this, where you, oh God, I've been here. You get it. You come back to the end of semiotics, more or less. And you're like, wait, I've been here before. And then you lose it again. What returns is not the same substance. It is I want to say compatible, intensive pattern. The way that at some point in the ocean, waves will create exactly the same wave or exceptionally close to ones that they've had before. It's not the same water molecules returning to that spot. It's not the same fish. That's not it. But it's the same waves. This thing must return to that degree of the soul's tonality. So here we have this quantitative measure of tonality, which is amazing. Tonality is the mood, the vibe, the timbre, the resonance. It's very musical, lyrical as an idea. That's the thing, because the degree is this quantitative element, but it's an intensive quality. Tonality is an intensive quality that's distinguishing one configuration of things from another. So this is not returning substance, but instead the return of an effective coloration or combination. Isn't this just sublation at Hegel? There's no negation here. So it's a little bit different. There's no negation here. Leibniz never clicked for me. It took me reading Smith's translation of The Fold, and it didn't hurt to have read this, because Leibniz is pretty important to all these guys, the mathematics of it. But again, it returns not to the moment of insight. You don't go back in time. That's not the thing. The phrasing he uses, it must return to that degree of the soul's tonality in which the law of the circle was revealed to it. So it's not the moment of insight, because that's not the point. It's not that. It's the intensive configuration recognizes that it's returned to that intensive configuration. It is the gateway where past and future meet. No negation? Correct. There's no negation in any of this. It's an entirely affirming philosophy. Entirely affirming. It doesn't mean that things don't cancel each other out, but that's not negation. It's not the same thing, because it's all produced. Even the negation is a thing that is produced because seeing the negation or having a negation means you've affirmatively created the negation. A negative image has to be affirmatively created. It can't exist as a negative. Kind of a big deal. So here we are reaching the end of this, and we've got through now kind of the structure of this return, right? So we hit tonality X, where it's like, holy shit, the revelation's here. And you have the revelation of the eternal return, The vicious circle starts in this process, right? Because immediately you forget that you had this. Because otherwise you'd be stuck there. That you dies. And the next one is born. And every one of these is almost a different song, a different tonality. Tonality A, then B, but it's not direct, random letters. I'm doing them in order just because it's easier. You go through all of those. And the entire series of tonalities exist. And then when you get back to the tonality in which the revelation happened, it like recognizes like, and the cycle repeats again. The cycle repeats again. The revelation is that thing that constitutes the series as one series. Without returning to that moment, it would be disconnected cycles, not an eternal return. So that's one. That's why you end up back at the revelation moment. There is a bit of an existential necessity here too, because only in that revelation, that tonality, that the configuration of tonality that gives that revelation, is there the knowledge of its circular nature. Every tonality, every individuation lives without knowing it. Only that one revelation has it. So by having this revelation, it creates almost a reflexive loop. The moment when the circle becomes conscious of itself as a circle. And that moment must recur for the cycle to conclude and complete and begin again. So, if it returns, questions to ask. Does it again reveal the eternal return as if it never happened before? No. Weird, right? It's not broken from the other thing. It's, oh my God, here it is again. I get it. Does the revelation repeat infinitely? Yes, but slightly different, maybe? All these questions are interesting. When you forget between the cycles, does every revelation feel like the first time, or do they layer? These are things to keep in mind as we go forward. These are things to keep in mind as we go forward. Before we get to the last paragraph of this, which will be the last paragraph for today, does anyone here have comments or questions on this so far? Why is he using the word soul? Because it works. I mean, because it works. Because I kind of explained that. He's not shying away from talking about multiple lives. It's metempsychosis as a thing. He's not like, it's nothing like that. He's like, no, Nietzsche did the thing where he would pull from all these old religions. Deleuze does this thing. Klossowski does this thing. Bataille does this thing. Bergson does this thing. Guattari does. You do this because these elements themselves have a conceptual weight. And so if you're going to talk about the soul's tonality, it's able to be communicated incredibly effectively. He's not trying to get away from, and he's not running away from the code of everyday signs. You can't. That's not the point. The point is to utilize the code of everyday signs and understand that it's being utilized. And actually, this next paragraph's going to cover it. Before I go, I guess that's part of how liberals sometimes say they just don't know what their best interests are, as if there is a persistent individual with concrete best interests, and you know all of the impulses and affects to such an extent you can somehow say you know best course. The thing I love to point out and I ask people about, and I think it's a thing to understand when you reflexively do almost anything, to take a moment and realize you did it reflexively if you can have that self-awareness. I have someone who's commenting on everything I do and is incredibly mentally unwell. This is not a new thing for me. Welcome to much of my life. But this person makes a lot of YouTube videos. And I have said, and I will say again, they're being an asshole, piece of shit. And then people go, my God, don't you understand? They're mentally unwell. They're experiencing being unhoused. They're living in a van. And I go, cool, that's great. Didn't you just say Donald Trump is a demon piece of shit? Why does it work for people who you want to have empathy for versus others? Why is it that you are able to respond and say this individual, they're completely responsible for everything they do. They clearly have choice. And then you look at other people and you go, they don't. They don't. And you look at them with pity. Don't do that. There's no difference here. This is the human condition that we're talking about. And so it's incredibly important when we're talking about all of these things to be saying, hey, there is no such thing as the best interest of any person. Every person is constantly changing, and that includes the racist assholes as much as it includes the victimized edge cases of humanity. It's just, this is how everyone works. And when you can believe that you understand not only everyone's impulses, but when you go a step further and you assign the capitalists, the dictators, the bastards of the world, somehow they have a steady, constant soul and are making affirmative choices freely, you're fundamentally misunderstanding not only everything, but it means what you actually want, what you're actually driving for is your own steady consistency where you are making choices. It means you've taken the challenge that is existence, where none of us experience consistency in a true way, that none of us have the ability to make true, affirmative, clear, and free choices. And instead of embracing that and understanding what that means for everyone, you assume that you just need to get to the point where you can do that too. And yes, exactly, James. And you build resentment in the worst kinds of ways. That's how that works, by the way. And that's the thing. This is everyone. This is everything we're talking about here. This is not me saying, oh, this is the good people. This is humanity. This is the human condition and the horrors of it. And there's no grounding. There's no foundation. There's nothing for any of us, anyone. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. You think Jeff Bezos doesn't have the same thing? He's like got an immortal soul. Like, what kind of weird teleological Christian view of people do you have? Stop doing that. Stop doing that. This psycho, 100% the best way to put it. Let go of inherited, internalized fascistic tendencies, because that demand that you are or that someone else is this thing that you wish you were, that thing means that you're never going to be able to break from what is creating over and over the fascism in everyone. Estelle, I love you. Funny for me, I have a choice. I am responsible, but no one else has for all intents and purposes. There's a old Raymond Smullyan joke. He was a logician who wrote a bunch of really odd logic puzzles and weird books. And he played with these things a lot about how people tend to think or how they talk about other people's experience and how they do things. And he says, these religious guys are sitting around, and one guy goes, I've always been quite sad that I've never had Christ actually speak to me, but I have been able to see his light. And the next guy goes, wow, I'm so jealous of that. I've been able to have him speak to me, but I've never been able to see his light. I've also always wished I felt his presence. The third guy goes, oh, I've always felt his presence, but I've always felt just so awful that I could not hear him or see him. And the fourth guy goes, well, I can't hear, see, or anything. I guess I'm the only one who's not nuts. There's a really weird way that we tend to build other people's experiences into how we judge them and other things, because their consistency, the demand of the responsibility of other people, is through and through all of this. And if you haven't at this point understood that this book is about that, It's about how that responsibility works and how responsibility functions. Nietzsche's entire thing is that we have I, and we love it because it gives us responsibility and continuity. So that way the person I make an agreement with in 2 weeks, I can go, hey, Estelle, you promised you'd do this. The fuck's wrong with you? You fucked up. And I can hold them responsible if they don't do what they promise. That consistency that I build into that, I build into myself. I build into everyone. But that's not how it works. The Estelle that exists in 2 weeks, the Brooks that exists tomorrow is not the same Brooks. The same Brooks that exists today is not the one who did the last Klossowski reading. Fundamentally different. Configurations different. All of this is different. Everyone is always. The Trump that is doing things today, the Stephen Miller. This is what my video was about. The radicality of love is about this. That's the whole point. This is the entire point, is understanding that you see other people, you recognize that they are built of what turned them into a piece of shit. That you can say they're a piece of shit, it's fine, but to understand that it's not them consistently a piece of shit, but their material conditions that produce it and continually revisit it. When this whole idea changes, it's not ship of Theseus. That's the thing. It's not even the ship of Theseus. That's the thing. It's not even ship of Theseus. It's another level beyond that. It is creating new tables. Oh, and this is, yeah, I mean, there's so many good references from that. I do want to do the last paragraph though, because next week I do want to get into fatalism. And then after this, I've got setups. I'm going to be doing a slow reading for podcast version of Anti-Oedipus explaining it. It's going to be pure audio. I'll be recording it later. I'll be doing it live, but I'm not going to be answering questions. It's just going to be talking through it. Does this mean giving right-wingers a second chance? No. See, one, what the fuck is a first chance? What the fuck is a second chance? What the fuck is any of that? Wait, the more you demand that they are consistent and that they are themselves, that they have a consistent soul, the more they will build that into their existence. That's the thing. So there is no such thing as right-wingers, correct? Yep, exactly. There's no right-winger, there's no they. There's none of that stuff. The thing they're doing in order to make sure that they maintain their coherence and their stability, you're feeding. Don't do that. It's not about giving a second chance. It's about not even saying I gave someone a first chance. Don't give people a chance. That's the wrong way to think about it. But to continue, let's read. Because this is just kind of fucking good paragraph for this. If the metamorphosis of the individual is the law of the vicious circle, how can it be willed? Suddenly the revelation of the circle becomes conscious. To remain in this consciousness, it is sufficient to live in conformity with the necessity of the circle, rewilling this same experience the moment we become the one who is initiated into the secret of the vicious circle, presupposes that one has lived through all livable experiences, all the existences prior to this moment, which privileges one existence among millions, no less than all those existences that will follow are necessary. To re-will all experiences, to re-will all possible acts, all possible joys and sufferings. This means that if such an act were accomplished now, if such an experience were now lived, it would have been necessary for one series to have preceded and for others to follow, not within the same individual, but in everything that belongs to the individual's own potential, so that one day it could find itself one more time. No, not 92. That was the right GIF. One more time. That was the right GIF. You don't delete that. Don't delete that shit. That's the correct GIF to post. Brett Brooks, the Zentapir video you recommended has had me thinking about overcoming judgment a lot. Well, it might be a consistent thing in these guys. To have done with the judgment of God is maybe one of the more formative pieces that all these guys care about. There's a reason. Let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. If the metamorphosis of the individual is the law of the vicious circle, how can it be willed? Ooh. Here you go. The Ubermensch is the thing that can will. How the fuck? How does this work? How can you will this thing if the metamorphosis of the individual is the law of it? There you go. That's the problem. How does agency occur in here? How is any of this? And again, the law of the vicious circle is not, it means that metamorphosis or this change is not optional. It's not a choice. Okay. It is a necessity. This is done by necessity, through necessity. There's no avoiding this shit. There's no choosing. There's no agency here. This is like laws of physics. So if that's the case, how the fuck can you will it? Because Nietzsche demands that we affirm this. Right? Nietzsche demands we affirm this. He says it actually quite a lot. This is not about a passive acceptance of things, but an affirmation. Amor fati, we'll be getting into fate next week, but amor fati requires a love of fate, of necessity. That would imply a willing subject. So how can you will that which is necessary? You want to go into Stoicism, like the good Stoics, this is the thing that they tarried with. How do you will what is necessary? This is the fucking question of Deleuze, Guattari. This is all of these guys. This is Serre. This is all of them. How do you will what is necessary? And they've gone over it. Before we get into this, it's worth like taking a second to talk about it. Because like the Stoics, and not the shitty Stoics. I hate YouTube so much. The Stoics, for them, it was about understanding. And with understanding, you can align with necessity, right? It's about, and it's not about accepting sadness or stoically standing there. I hate all of this stuff. Necessity does what it does regardless. It doesn't have causation in that way. You can't adjust it and change it. Understanding will give you an alignment with it. Unsatisfying. Interesting writing. Lots of really interesting writing. Unsatisfying. Kant also tried to take this on because for him, the determined things are phenomenal, but will is free in the nominal realm, right? But this creates a dualism. This is one of the things Nietzsche really tarries with and plays with a lot, because there is no true world of things, right? There's no true phenomenal world. That was Kant's sort of thing. And it definitely wasn't Schopenhauer, because Schopenhauer, who we'll just say a lot of other people also don't care for very much. Schopenhauer's version was, hey, it's not so much that you have will, it's that you are an expression of a universal will. But will is not really a metaphysical substance in that way. So all of these things are problematic for Nietzsche. All of them. And his answer, Klossowski's answer of Nietzsche here, which it's kind of hard to tear one apart from the other at this point, but this is Klossowski's answer within Nietzsche's answer. And it's this paragraph, is that the willing is part of the metamorphosis. It is not a subject that wills an object, but instead the intensive configuration shifts in a way that willing is a part of it. Because willing is not a cause, it is an effect. It doesn't mean it's not real, but it is not a cause. So keep that in mind as we go through. I just answered, but it's all of this is building that. So just here's how he's building it. So he says, suddenly, God damn it, Brooks, every time. I know. Suddenly, the revelation of the circle becomes conscious. Suddenly, as if it was a burst of lightning, a leap of faith for Kierkegaard. This is not a progressive, doesn't necessity do away with cause and effect? Oh, Lear, yes. Sort of. Yes. Yes. We'll get there. It's why I really like this part, because it's exactly the right question to ask. So, the revelation itself happens suddenly. This is not a small progressive shift in things. It is an instantaneous revelation in intensive tonality. What was lived unconsciously, the circular metamorphosis, the over and over thing that you don't sort of know, right? Suddenly becomes conscious. And it's not that it's possessed by consciousness. It's not that consciousness grasps it or groks it or whatever. It is that it becomes conscious. This is not that the individual becomes conscious of the revelation. The revelation itself is conscious. Okay? It has its own auto-effective capacity. So, there's no one to will here because there's no one willing. God damn it, Rudd. I fucking am so mad I can't use the word grok anymore. It's such a good word. God damn it. This is a huge shift. It's a big deal, this sentence. Suddenly the revelation of the circle becomes conscious. You are not experiencing that. It is conscious. That tonality, that revelation becomes conscious. Right? So this solves the paradox. This is the solution to the paradox we were just talking about. Consciousness, or a subject or an agent, doesn't will the circle. The circle is itself conscious in that. This is, since you're here, this is Geist becoming conscious of itself. Just a little treat for my Hegel friends. The difference would be there's no teleological or absolute here, but it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing. And the sudden shift is a big deal. Remember, we've been talking about what makes this up. Well, this is the tonalities reoccurring. This is the configuration coming back. It is the contingency of the intensive flux coming to itself. And he goes on. This is a big paragraph, guy. This is a big sentence. To remain in this consciousness, it is sufficient to live in conformity with the necessity of the circle, re-willing the same experience the moment we become the one who is initiated into the secret of the vicious circle, presupposes that one has lived through all livable experiences. Who was it that portrayed this as existence experiencing itself as it passes in and out of experiences? Bill Hicks. We are the universe. We are energy brought to a slow vibration experiencing itself subjectively. That's a Bill Hicks line. Great line, too. I'd go with Bill Hicks. I know other people said that, but I like Bill Hicks. Okay. This is there's so much. This is a big sentence. Small sentences are a pain in the ass in this book. Okay. To remain in this consciousness. The revelation is not permanent. It must be sustained. Buddha said after enlightenment, one just chops wood and gathers water. He says that in response to, Buddha talks about this in response to, and this is Tao Te Ching too. There's the Westerners, it's an old parable. that I know is probably more recent. I want to say, who was it? Daisetsu Suzuki, I think, said it. Told the story of Westerners went to some Zen temple. They were so excited, and they were like, hey, we're here to study underneath you. We want to be enlightened. And the master was like, excellent. Well, the well is at the bottom of the hill, and we must go gather water. And one of the Westerners turned to the other and says, well, I can do it. I'm stronger. The other one said, yes, but I need the practice. And they argued for a bit. And when they finally decided that they would both go down, the master already had returned with the water. There is a way that all of these stories point towards, and the idea that is being talked here, and Nietzsche even spoke about it, that these things must be lived. This isn't about contemplation. It isn't about discussion. It isn't about you thinking the thing or thinking about the thing. It is the very experience of thought itself, being aware of itself and thinking itself. The vicious circle is sentient by virtue of you experiencing it too. No. Instead, it's the vicious circle becomes conscious, and you are that, but you're not. It's a shift in that way. And the phrasing is really interesting here. Sufficient to live in conformity with necessity. To remain in that consciousness, it is sufficient to live in conformity with the necessity of the circle. The conformity of the necessity is not inevitable. It's sufficient. You can live in contradiction with this necessity. You can have resentment. You can experience things in bad faith. You can be reactive to forces in ways you're not, sort of aligned with. That even though necessity operates, you can still be fucking with it, and you can still be fighting the stream instead of bending with it. You can be the reed that breaks and not the reed that bends. Conforming means aligning the intensive tonality with the circular movement. And as such, he says, rewilling this same experience, and that experience, the moment we become the one who is initiated into the secret of the vicious circle, rewilling. This is not willing something new. It is rewilling that which has already occurred. What Nietzsche adds to all of these things is that the eternal return demands willing again what was necessary. It isn't about accepting stoically the future necessity. It is affirming the past necessity. So, okay, you have this experience that occurs the first time. There's no choices here. You get hit with the fucking experience of it. This revelation comes to you. Understanding it was necessary, and it will return. And then it is re-willed by affirming its necessity and return. The thing that returns is the re-willing itself. You're re-willing the same experience. The hyphen is a huge deal here. You're not willing something new. You're re-willing that thing that has already occurred. The re-willing. You're re-willing. That moment we become one who is initiated into the secret of the vicious circle. That's the moment that you're re-willing, the experience you're re-willing, the contingent configuration. And it has this weird thing. It presupposes that you've lived through all livable experiences, which seems itself like an absurd statement. But unless you've traversed the entire series, you can't make it back. Again, there's a logical structure to this they've built. The revelation moment is a synthesis of all series, all signs, everything. To understand the necessity of it requires understanding what led to this. What led to it is for all prior experiences in the series to have been experienced. Therefore, actual authentic re-willing requires having lived the series. Because again, this isn't external contemplation. It is experience itself. This is not merely imagining other experiences. It means you underwent them. And this is itself odd and problematic, because the weirdness of this is that how do you live all livable experiences if you haven't re-willed? Because, right? If those experiences include all future experiences and you're going to be going back through them, how does that work? I haven't re-willed yet, so how do you have that thing? Well, it's because all the existences prior to this moment, which privileges one existence among millions, no less than all those existences that will follow, are necessary. Past and future existences are necessary for that privileged moment to be there. There is a bidirectional necessity, future past. Aeon versus Chronos, people. This is that thing. And it privileges one experience among millions, that the moment of revelation is singular. It is able to stand in this entire infinite series on its own. The singularity of it, though, is not arbitrary. It is privileged because it is the moment of self-consciousness the series experiences. The series becomes sentient in that moment. It is self-conscious in that moment. You and the series become one. Right? Yeah, that's the easy way to say it. And it privileges it no less than all those existences that will follow are necessary. Future existences are necessary for that moment of revelation. Linear causality is gone, basically. It's just an elimination of that, because we're, again, talking about the virtual, and causality inside of that works very differently, because the future exists virtually in its potential within the present, within the actualized present. So this revelation in the present will include the virtual future as necessity within it as well. Those future necessities are built into its own possibility. Your re-willing, it hasn't happened yet. That doesn't matter. The virtuality and the potential of it is already built into it in the conditions of now. It's going to return. By the necessity of how these things work, you will see it. And you know that. Because it knows that. Because it sees that. It is necessary. That's how it ends. No less than all those existences that will follow are necessary. This is not an epistemological claim. There's an ontological necessity built in here. It is not necessary from a certain perspective. The very structure of the return itself has it built into it. So he continues. Let me scroll down a little bit. Oop. To re-will all experiences, to re-will all possible acts, all possible joys and sufferings. This means that if such an act were accomplished now, if such an experience were now lived, it would have been necessary for one series to have proceeded and for others to follow, not within the same individual, but in everything that belongs to the individual's own potential, so that one day it could find itself one more time. All experiences. There's too much highlight on the page. Let me change how I do this, because we're just gonna, I want to make sure we stay in it, but it's just too much covering. It's within that. That's where we are. Okay. To rewill all experiences, to rewill all possible acts, all possible joys and sufferings. All experiences, not just peak moments, not just the things you liked or were the worst or troughs and everything. No. All possible acts, not just the things that happened, all possible acts, all potential acts, all virtual acts, all joys and sufferings, all possible joys and sufferings. There's no hierarchy of value here. All vibrations and all versions of this. Total affirmation. Total affirmation. Again, total affirmation. This means that if such an act were accomplished now, if such an experience were now lived, it would have been necessary for one series to have preceded and for others to follow. The present act required a particular series. One series would have had to precede it necessarily. Not a random selection of things, a specific sequence of experiences. Think of it like a chess game, right? Every position or setup of a board. Raymond Smullyan has Chess Mysteries of Sherlock Holmes, one of the best fucking mystery books, logic books, puzzle books I've ever read, because every mystery can be solved by looking at the chess pieces on the board and knowing exactly what happened. Because there are things that came together to create that specific set of events. That present act requires a particular prior series, not a random series, a particular one series to have preceded, this specific one, and for others to follow. And as such, the chess game is going to continue in a certain way because an act's meaning or its intensive significance depends on what comes after. Retroactive determination is a thing. If you don't realize that, that's built into this. That's straight up built into this. The whole time. Retroactive determination is built into this. Falling back, meaning falling back on itself, is built into this. That's part and parcel. But there's a line. Just to say it all at once. If such an experience were now lived, it would have been necessary for one series to have preceded, for others to follow. Not within the same individual, but in everything that belongs to the individual's own potential. So, the series I was just talking about, and that they were talking about, that series that led up, it is not confined to the boundaries of that particular identity or individuation, right? There's no personal continuity here. It's not about that. It's not within the same individual. So, instead, it's in everything that belongs to the individual's own potential. It is not what you experience. It is not all possible anything. It is the particular range of intensive variations accessible to your particular configuration. Sheet music can be given to a lot of instruments, but you're not going to be able to give it to the guy playing the cymbals. Every instrument has a range. An oboe won't be playing the same exact notes as a flute. A violin doesn't do what a tuba does. They have their own registers. They have their own potentialities. It isn't about all anything ever. Everything that belongs to the individual's own potential. Everything that belongs to the individual's own potential. This is like the most Spinoza shit. Go read the Ethics. It's great. Every individual has their own specific potentius, power, potential. It's the ability to enact. It's determined by the composition of everything, every expression, right? This isn't that everyone has unlimited possibility. You can't be anything you want when you grow up. That's not really how this works. But it's not a rigid determination in that you're only allowed these things. It's determinate potentialities, which is fucking awesome. Just the phrasing of this is great. The phrasing of this is fucking great. But that last line is a fucking murder. So that one day it could find itself one more time. Find itself one more time. But wait, what about you? Is it you? No. This is self-recognition. Again, the vicious circle, the eternal return, is experiencing itself. The entire series experiences itself by being itself, by coming into existence and cognition of itself. It groks itself. It is the system of thought. It is the thought itself. And what's happening here is it's finding itself. This is not the same individual. This is not that I get to get back to myself. It is that the same intensive pattern, the same tonality, high tonality, returns one more time. So, the eternal return structure is patterns recurring through different actualizations. So, rewilling the eternal return requires a particular prior series of experiences. And it requires specific future series of experiences. But these experiences, this series, extend beyond the boundaries of the individual and instead are about the configuration's potentialities. So that same intensive pattern can recur under wholly other contingent, different realities of what we understand them to be. So I don't return. The intensive configuration that appears as I returns. Right? This is Hesiod, Deleuze's use of that, individuation beyond subjectivity, which is incredibly complicated as a thing. But that's what this is. This is all of that. So, we get fucked up because we like to have ourselves be a subject. We like to consider ourselves that. We like where we want to get back to that. We want to have that consistency. The revelation comes about that, actually, no, I've been here before, but it's not I who have been here. It's all of the things that make me up in particular combinations, not at a signification sense, not in a, oh, Brooks has different colored hair today, therefore it's a different Brooks. No, that's fucking stupid. No, that's fucking stupid. But all of the intensities ebb and flow in the way that the tide reappears every day, but it's not the same water. In the way that once a year you have the giant waves on certain coasts, or hurricane season. This is not because it is the hurricane that comes back. It's the configuration that it becomes aware enough of itself, of all of its future potentialities and past potentialities. What returns is not the individual, but that intensive pattern that can find itself across actualizations. So, because we're going to be getting into this, genuinely, this is revelatory. If you're following, and I hope you are, this is one of the most revelatory books that exists, as far as I'm concerned, because his description of things, the way he talks about it, is stunning. If you want to talk about fatalism or voluntarism, that will builds the world, or that the world makes will, right? Whatever that is. Amor fati, the love of fate, is about understanding that the things that allow us to understand fatalism or discuss it, they're the problem. The things that make us consider agency and voluntarism is the problem. It's not about compatibilism. It's not finding free and determined things here and here. It's not incompatibilism. It's it's completely destroying the terms. Freedom is not about choices between alternatives that we understand. It is about an affirmation of necessity, and not necessity in the sense of like external constraints that force me to be in this position. It is about understanding necessity as that intensive configuration of one's own nature, of the nature of that moment, of that configuration. That willing is not a subjective decision, a you making a choice or an agent making a choice, but instead it is an intensive shift that includes the moment of affirming choice. Okay? It is alignment of intensive tonality with the necessity of circular return. And the reason it comes back, but isn't identical, is because intensities are what keep coming back and they're not identical. If every day you go out and you take a perfect snapshot of the ocean hitting the waves, you may say, look, the waves are identical in these two photos, but the water particles aren't the same water particles. The fish aren't the same fish. The placement of sand isn't the same. The air molecules aren't the same. The makeup of everything is entirely different, yet you can recognize them as the same. That is because what you're doing is recognizing not the pattern of the surface, but because the intensities that produce all of that are recurring, and you are that. That is what is experiencing it. So it's different every single time because the intensities are fundamentally coming together, but everything else can be entirely different. The actualization can be wholly different. That's fucking irrelevant because the actuality is in the intensities themselves. I really fucking love this book. I really fucking love this book. Application of this, I would try to explain conspiracy theories about cabals to a friend of mine. People believe makes it true. The conditions what produce the choice that create them. It's very much what he's arguing when it comes to kind of all of these things, to be perfectly frank. Absolutely. But it's these things condition themselves. So we'll be talking about it because the eternal return is not fatalism. I'm going to our copy. Does Dan Smith have one? This is the Dan Smith copy. This is the Dan Smith's translation. So, I mean, the dude knows his shit. Like, I don't, dude does good. I'm usually a huge dick when it comes to like translation things, but like, fuck, he nails it. He just fucking nails it. And he's smarter at this stuff. He knows to lose so much better than me. So it's kind of nice to be able to like see the choices he makes and go, oh, it's because, again, his grasp of these things is huge. The English copy that exists for Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle is Dan Smith's. I don't think there's another translation that exists out there for sale. I don't believe. Possible, but I do not believe. But who knows? But who knows? Let's see. With that, I'm going to, okay, Foxy says, so the same things find themselves throughout potentialities, the same intensity. So it's not that they're the same things. Again, think of it as the ocean waves being the same. There's nothing except the energies and intensities that are producing the patterns that make the waves. There's no such thing as a wave. There's no such thing as a wave, right? There's none. But you're able to see the wave. So obviously it exists in some capacity and you're recognizing it as such. Those intensities are what repeat. The wave and the wave and the wave. And the waves are different every single time. The intensities are different, but you recognize them as the same thing over and over and over. You are that. This is why Nietzsche, when he saw the wave, he writes about it, that he looked over the ocean. He said, waves, you and I are of the same kind. That's what he meant, that he and you and all of us, it's the same thing. When you see clouds, clouds are not dissipating things. You see them. Do you see them? Then there are particular types of clouds that show up in very particular combinations of intensive forces that are at play within the physical and climate-based realm across the globe. And there's amazing things that go into it. But it is not that a butterfly flapped its wings to make that happen. It's the intensities of all of it. And you recognize the clouds. You see the clouds. You know that. Then they repeat. But it's not the same fucking cloud. And you know it's not the same cloud. You don't go, Steve, how are you doing? You're doing that with you. You are the cloud. Now you're more complex, and it's the cloud experiencing itself, which is crazy shit when you start realizing that. But the intensity is experiencing themselves and being aware of themselves and then coming back and falling back and then losing themselves back in the same illusion. That's the point. You get lost in the illusion until you find yourself and die again and realize. And then you re-will all of that. Or you don't, and you build up resentment. You build up the negative. You build up the fucking hatred of the world that instead makes that death terrifying. It makes all of this horrifying. And those very same forces then get turned against themselves. And we become that. We become that. But I am going to let the YouTube, I'm fried. This has been phenomenal. As always, I'm having a very good time doing these lately, which is nice. Klossowski's amazing. Next week, we're going to be going straight down into the difference between the eternal return and traditional fatalism, because it's kind of a big deal. If you didn't know, it's kind of a big thing. So please join us next week, because I think we're gonna actually be able to finish out. We're gonna finish the chapter next week, so then we can move on to chapter 4, which is holy shit. If you've experienced such things, chapter 4 is a fucking wild ride. But next week will be about fate, and it'll be fun, and I can't wait. If you appreciate what I do, it's always fun. Drop a membership. First, subscribe, like, all that fun, dumb shit. Watch my other video on protesting, because I think it's important, and you all should be, as the world is getting worse. And if you're in America, we're getting to experience it, to steal from Malcolm X. The chickens are coming home to roost. And Trump is our cock. Trump's a huge cock. It's going to be a long, he's a small cock, technically, fair. It's going to be a lot, but you need to understand the difference between being a proper peaceful protester and saying you're a peaceful protester. Please do take a look at that. Do watch these things. Politics matters, all of these things. And as such, because politics matters, I'm going to actually send you over to a channel who does a lot of really good little politics stuff. Gust X. They're small, tiny subscriber. But I like tiny subscribers who do interesting politics. So give them some love. And besides that, outside of it, I will see you all on YouTube soon enough. All right, let me see if I can get rid of. All right, sent them off.